Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The sterile metallic gleam of the new studio reflected the coldness of the carefully crafted narratives it produced. Ethan Hayes sat at his desk, his eyes scanning the teleprompter in front of him. The words flowed smoothly as they always did, empty, polished, and approved. He had delivered them 1,000 times before, but today they stuck in his throat like shards of glass. And in other news, the party's efforts to promote economic growth on the outer colonies have reached a new high. Ethan read, his voice steady despite the growing storm of unease in his chest. Unemployment has dropped to record lows, and citizens are expressing increased satisfaction with the administration's policy. He glanced at the clock in the corner of the screen. 5 more minutes, just 5 more minutes. I need to be off the air. As the segment wrapped up, Ethan smiled, thanking his viewers with practiced sincerity. The red light on the camera blinked off and the facade dropped from his face. "You okay, Ethan?" his producer, Alan, asked from behind the glass wall of the control room. His voice crackled through the earpiece Ethan had yet to remove. "Yeah, just tired," Ethan muttered, pulling the small device from his ear and tossing it onto the desk. Same old lie. He stood, shaking off the heavy cloak of disillusionment that had been growing around him for months now. Ever since he discovered the depth of the party, some manipulation, how every piece of news, every opinion, every shred of information was controlled, edited, and repackaged to serve their agenda, his role as a journalist had felt more like a prison sentence. "Let's grab a drink after work. Talk it out," Alan offered, but Ethan shook his head. "Not today. I forgot something I need to do." Alan didn't press. He knew better than to pry. Ethan had been increasingly distant, his once bright-eyed optimism ground down by the relentless machinery of the party's media empire. As Ethan left the building, the sprawling metropolis of New Haven stretched before him, a city of towering skyscrapers and neon-lit streets, the heart of the interstellar republic. It was a place where the future felt both close and distant, a world of technological marvels and deep-rooted oppression. The city's digital billboards flashed the latest party slogans, urging citizens to trust in the truth and support the election for stability. But Ethan knew the truth was anything but stable. He wound through the crowds, his mind racing. The presidential election was less than a month away, and the party's stranglehold on the media had all but guaranteed President Eleanor Tang would remain in power. The opposition had been silenced, drowned out by waves of propaganda and fake news. The people believed what they were told to believe. Not for long, Ethan promised himself. His apartment was dark and quiet, the hum of the city muted through the reinforced window. He crossed the small living space, past the unmade bed and scattered papers, to a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a slim tablet, its screen locked behind layers of security. He entered the code and waited as the tablet booted up. The screen flickered, then displayed a familiar message, ready for transmission. Ethan had been preparing for this moment for weeks, carefully gathering evidence of the party, some manipulation of public opinion, the doctored news stories, the fake statistics, the falsified report. He had enough to expose the whole operation, to show the galaxy what was really happening in the interstellar republic. But he couldn't do it alone. He tapped a series of encrypted commands, sending a signal to a contact he had only met once, but had come to trust implicitly. Lena Rowe, a former media systems engineer who had worked for the party's central media hub, had agreed to help him. She had seen firsthand how deep the manipulation ran, and like Ethan, she wanted to stop it. A message appeared on his screen: "Meet at the usual place." Ethan nodded to himself, closing the tablet and tucking it into his jacket. It was time to make his move. The underground cafe was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and quiet conversation. It was the kind of place where people went to disappear, to blend into the background of the city's underworld. Ethan found Lena sitting in the back, her face partially obscured by the hood of her jacket. "Right on time," she said as he slid into the booth across from her. Her voice was soft but sharp, a mix of caution and determination. "I couldn't risk being late," Ethan replied, his voice low. "Do you have what we need?" Lena glanced around, ensuring no one was paying them any attention, before sliding a small data chip across the table. "This will get us into the central media hub," she said. "It's a backdoor I built into their system years ago. They don't quote it exists yet, but once we use it, they'll find out." Ethan picked up the chip, turning it over in his fingers. "And what about once we can we broadcast?" Lena nodded. They mapped out a way to bypass their censorship algorithm. We can send out an unfiltered broadcast to every corner of the Republic, but we'll only have a small window. Once they realize what's happening, they'll shut us down when they'll need to move fast. Ethan Chan's mind raced, already picturing the headlines that would follow if they succeeded. The truth would spread like wildfire at the party, lies exposed for all to see, but the risks were monumental. What about security, Chen? Isn't he going to just let us waltz in? Ethan said, referring to General Tao Shen, the man in charge of the party's science media control. Lena's eyes darkened. I've got a plan for that too, but it's not going to be easy. Chan's no fool. He's been watching for any sign of rebellion. We'll need help. Lena leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I know a guy, kind of our own. He saw one of the best hackers in the system, but he's unpredictable. If we can convince him to work with us, he can disable the security long enough for us to get in and out. Ethan frowned. He had heard of Kai rumors of a rogue hacker who had a penchant for chaos and little regard for authority. Trusting him could be dangerous, but they didn't have much of a choice. I'll meet him, Ethan said. If he's as good as you say, we'll bring him on board. Lena nodded, her eyes glinting with a mix of hope and fear. Just be careful, Ethan. This is bigger than any of us if we fail. We won't, Ethan interrupted, more to reassure himself than her. We can, to afford to. 2 days later, Ethan found himself in a dimly lit basement far from the polished skyscrapers of New Haven. The air was thick with the smell of dust and old machinery, and the faint hum of computers filled the room. In the center of it all sat Kai Navarro, his fingers dancing over a holographic keyboard as streams of code flowed across the screen in front of him. You must be Ethan, Kai said, without looking up. His voice was smooth, almost amused, as if this were all a game to him.
Lena told me you do come.
Ethan crossed his arms, eyeing the hacker warily. She says you were the best. Kai smirked, finally glancing up. I am, but that doesn't mean I'm dying to help you. Ethan's jaw tightened. We were talking about exposing the biggest conspiracy in the Republic to history. You really want to sit this one out? Kai leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he studied Ethan. I don't trust people like you, journalists, you real liars, just like the rest of them. Ethan felt a surge of anger, but forced it down. I am not like that. Kai raised an eyebrow. No then, why do you sound like every other party puppet on the news? Ethan's fists clenched at his sides because I don't have a choice, but I am trying to change that. Kai was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching Ethan's face. Finally, he sighed and leaned forward, his fingers resuming their dance over the keyboard. All right, he said I'll help you, but only because I hate the party more than I hate you. Ethan exhaled relief, washing over him. Good, we don't have much time. Kai grinned, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Then let's get to work. The days that followed were a blur of planning and preparation. Ethan, Lena, and Kai worked in secret, communicating through encrypted channels and meeting only in the shadow. The central media hub was heavily guarded, both physically and digitally, but with Kai's expertise and Lena's cider knowledge, they had a chance. A small chance. The night of the infiltration came faster than Ethan had anticipated. They met at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The sky above them filled with the glow of distant stars. Lena was already there, her face tense with determination, while Kai worked furiously on his tablet, disabling security protocols from a distance. This is it, Ethan said, his heart pounding in his chest. Once we were in there, so no going back. Lena nodded, her eyes locked on the horizon. I know. Kai looked up, his grin fading into something more serious. I've disabled the first layer of security, but the clock is ticking. We've got 20 minutes before they figure out something strong. Ethan's stomach twisted. 20 minutes wasn't much time, but it was all they had. They moved quickly, slipping through the shadows as they approached the central media hub. The massive structure loomed above them, a fortress of steel and glass, its walls glowing with the light of 1,000 screens. Inside the party's eye, the propaganda machine churned, twisting reality into whatever shape it needed. But tonight, Ethan would break that machine. They reached the entrance, and Lena used her access codes to slip past the outer defenses. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, the hum of machinery filling the silence. They moved deeper into the building past rows of servers and control panels until they reached the heart of the hub. Ethan's pulse quickened as they approached the central broadcasting station. the place where all news and information were filtered before being sent out to the galaxy. We're almost there, Lena whispered. Kaya, disable the final security system. Kai nodded, his fingers flying over the tablet as he worked. But just as the last security protocol fell away, a voice echoed through the room. Well. Ethan's blood ran cold. He turned to see General Victor Chen standing in the doorway, flanked by armed guards. His eyes glinted with a predatory smile. You didn't really think you could get away with this, did you? Chen sneered. You journalists always think you were smarter than everyone else. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stand tall, really exposing the truth. Chen, you can stop us. Tenno's smile widened. Oh, I think I can. As the guards raised their weapons, Ethan realized they were out of time. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the armed guard stepped forward. He could feel Lena tense beside him, her hand inching toward the small device she kept tucked in her jacket pocket. Kai for once had stopped his frantic typing, his wide eyes darting between Ethan and Chen. You're not going to get out of here alive, Ken said, his voice laced with cold satisfaction. I don't know what you thought this little stunt would accomplish, but it's over. You were finished. Ethan's mind raced, trying to find an opening, a way to get to the broadcast console just a few feet away. Everything they had worked for was slipping away in front of him. If he didn't act now, it would be over not just for them, but for the entire Republic. He glanced at Lena. Her eyes met his, filled with determination and fear in equal measure. Now, Ethan whispered, barely moving his lip. Without hesitation, Lena flicked the switch on her device, sending a pulse through the building, saw electrical grid. The lights flickered and the guards hesitated for a split second. It was all Ethan needed. Move, he shouted. Ethan lunged forward, diving toward the console as the guards opened fire. The air was filled with the sharp crack of energy bolts, the walls around them exploding in spark. Lena ducked behind a pillar, while Kai scrambled for cover behind a stack of servers. Ethan hit the ground hard, sliding behind the broadcasting station. His fingers fumbled over the controls as he heard Chen bark orders to his men. Don't let them touch that console, Chen shouted, his calm demeanor slipping as panic set in. Ethan's heart pounded in his ears as he worked trying to patch the signal through to the main feed. He could hear the guards advancing, their footsteps growing louder. His hands shook, but he forced himself to focus. He wasn't a hacker like Kai, but he knew enough to start the broadcast. He had to. Suddenly, the screen in front of him lit up with a blinking red warning. Connection denied. No, Ethan muttered, his fingers flying across the key. From the corner of his eye, he saw Lena pop up from behind the pillar, taking out one of the guards with a well-placed energy shot. But the others were closing in, and Chen was still standing at the doorway, his eyes locked on Ethan like a predator waiting for the kill. Just as Ethan was about to give up, a second screen flashed to life beside him. Kyle's face appeared, his expression twisted in concentration. I've got you, Kai said, his voice strained. Just keep them busy for 10 more seconds. Ethan didn't have time to respond. The guards were on him now, their footsteps mere feet away. He ducked as another blast of energy flew over his head, scorching the console behind him. He could feel the heat on the back of his neck, but he didn't stop. His fingers danced across the keyboard, working in tandem with Kai's remote hacking. The seconds stretched into an eternity, each one punctuated by the hiss of weapons fire and the distant shouts of Chenna's men. Come on, Ethan muttered under his breath. Then with a sudden burst of light, the main screen in front of him flashed to life. Broadcast initiated. Ethan's heart leapt into his throat. It was happening. The truth was about to be sent to every corner of the Republic. He could see the data streaming out, unfiltered and raw doctored news reports, fake election results, confidential party communication. Everything they had gathered, everything they had risked their lives for, was now out in the open. But it wasn't over yet. Chen's voice cut through the chaos, filled with venom. Shut it down. Nat. The guards surged forward, but Lena was faster. She sprang from her cover, firing with pinpoint accuracy. 2 more guards dropped to the floor, their weapons clattering beside them. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his hand reaching for the emergency lockdown switch if he could just buy them a few more seconds. A sharp pain exploded in his side. He stumbled, gasping, his hand flying to the wound blood. He'd been hit. Ethan, Elena's voice rang out. He waved her off, struggling to stay upright. Keep going, he shouted, his vision blurring as he slammed his hand down on the switch. The doors to the control room hissed shut, sealing them inside. It wouldn't hold for long, but it would be enough. Ethan collapsed against the console, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The room was spinning, but through the haze of pain, he saw the broadcast still streaming. The truth was out there, now beyond Chen's reach. Are you crazy? A concise voice came through the speakers, panic in his tone.
We're whiz.
Only got a few more seconds before they cut the power to the whole building. Ethan tried to respond, but his throat was dry, and the pain in his side was making it hard to think. Lena was suddenly beside him, her hands pressing against the wound, trying to stem the flow of blood. We did it, Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. You're at it, Sci, out there. Lena's face was pale, her hands stained with his blood, but she nodded. All right, yeah, we did. The door behind them shuddered as Chen's men tried to force their way in. They didn't have much time. Help me up, Ethan said, his voice weak but determined. Ari, we need to get out of here. Lena hesitated, but the sound of the door giving way made up her mind. She pulled Ethan to his feet, half carrying him toward the back exit. Kai was already there, frantically typing on his tablet as he disabled the final security protocol. Can you walk? Lena asked, her voice tight with concern. Ethan nodded, though every step sent waves of pain through his body. They stumbled down the narrow hallway, the sound of Chen's forces breaking through the control room behind them. We're not going to make it, T.I. said, his voice cracking with fear. So they've divided. Ethan's mind raced, searching for an option, any option. Then he saw the emergency escape hatch at the end of the hall. Dad, he gasped, pointing with a shaking hand. Kai's eyes widened. Are you insane? That leads to the service tunnels. We'll be sitting ducks. It's we're only shot, Lena said, already dragging Ethan toward the hatch. They reached the hatch just as the first of Chen's men rounded the corner. Energy blasts filled the air, scorching the walls around them. Ethan's vision was starting to fade, but he forced himself to focus to keep moving. They were so close. Lena yanked the hatch open, shoving Ethan inside. Kai followed, sealing the hatch behind them just as another volley of shots rang out. The service tunnels were dark, the air thick with the smell of oil and rust. The narrow passageway stretched out before them, leading deeper into the bowels of the building. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. Ethan could feel his strength waning, the wound in his side burning with every step, but he pressed on. We need to find a way out of the city, Helena said, her voice urgent. Ioe Chen, it's not going to stop until we free Dead. Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure how much longer he could hold on. The broadcast had gone out, but the battle was far from over. They had exposed the party's lies, but the Republic was vast, and the party's reach was long. They would need to disappear, to go underground, if they had any hope of surviving the aftermath. As they reached the end of the tunnel, the faint sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Chen's men were close, too close. Lena's eyes darted around, searching for an exit. Carried their carry, she whispered, pointing to a maintenance ladder leading up to the surface. Kai scrambled up first, his movements quick and frantic. Lena followed, dragging Ethan behind her. His vision was fading fast, the pain in his side becoming unbearable, but he couldn't stop. Now not when they were so close. They reached the surface, emerging into the cold night air of New Haven. The city's neon lights flickered in the distance, but for now they were safe. They had made it. Ethan collapsed against the wall of the alleyway, his breath ragged. Lena knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pressed against the wound. We did it, Ethan whispered, his voice barely a breath. And we got the truth out. Lena nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Sab, yeah, we did. Connor was already scanning the horizon, his fingers twitching as he pulled up a map of the city. We need to move. Chensa is going to have the entire city locked down within the hour. Ethan closed his eyes, the weight of everything they had accomplished and everything that still lay ahead, pressing down on him. As the sirens began to wail in the distance, Ethan allowed himself a moment of peace. The lies had been exposed. The people would rise. The battle for freedom had just begun.